let me assure you that I will not only have bias, but I will be steeped only in social sciences. And some of you who would find social science methodology somewhat not quite relevant have an option to use your time in the library. Now I will give you 1 minute's time to go out of the hall. Well, I have been asked to discuss 3 important points which are directly relevant to the student who is engaged in research, anyone who is engaged in research. And these are the sources, authentication of the sources, and the rules of citations. And they're all mechanical things to see, looked at from one point of view. They're also vital things to see which you have to cultivate. These are the instruments which you have to apply constantly. And if you want to produce a perfect version of what you want to express, and perfect thesis also, you have to be very careful about all these 3. What provides you information is a source. But all that provides information doesn't become a source for you. Only that which is relevant to you becomes a source. If you are a student of social science, see, you have to choose your field, and what is relevant to that field becomes what information is relevant to that field becomes source. Let us be very clear about it. If you are a student of science, natural sciences or humanities, then once again similar instruments will have to be applied, and you have to shift the emphasis. Now, it is very difficult to define the source, because the source can be direct sources, indirect sources, sources which have no relevance whatsoever but still relevant. It is like reading a book or reading sentences in a book. The reading would help you to understand the literal meaning. At least you should be able to understand the literal meaning of the sentence. You should not stop with the literal meaning, but you'll have to go beyond the literal meaning and try to understand the implied meaning. Probably you may not have to stop with the implied meaning, you will have to go beyond that and see what is hidden between the lines also. Then only you will be able to understand the true nature of a statement made in a source. Suppose if I have to give an example, I have started my lecture and somebody walks in to see after 2 minutes. If I say, "Oh, you great man, walk in, you have a place here," it is a statement. You have understood the statement very well, but there is a sarcasm hidden in it. "Oh, great man" means, "Oh, fool, you are welcome here, you are not welcome here. You have a seat, I would rather not give you any seat because you are late." The same sentence can be interpreted in 2 different ways, isn't it? So, where there is satire, sarcasm, and also profound hidden meaning in a sentence, you will have to decode it and try to understand it. Well, when you think in terms of sources, you have to bear in mind these 3 important elements also. Now, assuming that you are aware of it, aware of these kind of things, requirements demanded on you, let us see how you search the sources. Searching the sources is called heuristics. You go about exploring the sources. And without exploring the sources, you will not be able to make any progress in your research. Now, as a fresh student of research, first of all, you will have to acquaint yourselves with the field, that the sources which are directly related to your problem will come later, but sources which are indirectly related to your program, or field of work, will become the most important thing to begin with. This is acquaintance with the secondary material. What is the secondary material? The material which has already emerged from the writings of so many other people, not necessarily on the point on which you are engaged, but relating to the point to which you are engaged. And these secondary sources are very, very important, because unless you acquire a mastery over the secondary sources, you will not be able to know what you are doing is you are doing it for the first time or the 10th time. And at the end of the research, or when you strongly feel that you have done something, suddenly you realize that what you have been doing has already been done by someone. So collecting information is very, very important, but at the same time, you will have to have this discriminating mind in you to realize that is what is indirectly related to your problem should be first mastered before you can come to the instruments which are directly useful to you to operate on the table. What is a secondary material, or what is called secondary sources? Secondary source can be of various kinds. I speak from a little bit of experience that I have gone through. For me as a student of history, or for me as a student of art, secondary material, everything that relates to that field, literature, sociology, economics, polity, folk songs, local legends, and whatever that has been said about that, it may have a base or it may not have a base. Now, how do you go about it? To see, if you wanted to work on if you wanted to work on the 5th century AD as a research project, your project is 6th century or 16th century, whatever you would like to do. If you take 6th century, 4th century or 5th century, you have to explore who are the great authors of this century. If you do not know who are the great authors, you will have to go to the history of literature and find out to see who are the great authors, because history of literature will provide you the chronology and the framework. But that will not help you to understand the entire literature. It only guides you to the people who are to be consulted. Suppose if you are beginning, your work is on 5th century, then you have to go to Kalidasa. And how do you find this Kalidasa is a poet? Because you do not know that whether Kalidasa is a poet or a dramatist or a human being or an animal or whatever. You have no idea. You have heard about him, probably. That has given you enough information to deduct to see that he was a poet. But if you had not heard about him, there are people who do not know who Kalidasa is in major universities of United Kingdom. That is the advantage you have. You all have heard about Shakespeare, but they have not heard about Kalidasa, although they are equally great people, because they have not found the relevance of knowing Kalidasa, because they have been preoccupied with their own literature, and they are not aware of it, although they ruled over India, the English ruled over India. That way, the Indians have an advantage. I could say Indians have an advantage. We know who is Charles the Great, who is Elizabeth, what is the Rump Parliament. We all know about it. What is the French Revolution? But they don't know anything about it. Suppose if you are born in England and if you have to start your work on something like this, see, you do not know who is Kalidasa. How do you find out what is the source to which you have to go to find out who is this guy called Kalidasa? A couple of easy ways to do it is nowadays you go to the website and find out. There may be not one Kalidasa, but there are 100 Kalidasas. Then you have to narrow it down to a 5th century poet. Then you may also have some problems. Then you will have to find out to see whether what works he produced. So enough information is not available on Kalidasa himself, so you will have to go to Ritusamhara or Shakuntala or some other work which he has composed and punch there and find out if the Shakuntala is available or not. There may be Shakuntala. Shakuntalas of various kinds also. Shakuntala Narsimhan could be one of them. Now you have to narrow down these things. This is those people who go to the website. But I grew up at a time when website was not available to me. And we have to make a difficult effort, what's called a strenuous effort, to find out who Kalidasa was. We had been left with only one alternative: go to the university library and find out to see under the catalog, card catalogs, to see, consult Kalidasa and find out to see whether he is the Kalidasa you are seeking. If there is any confusion, you see, you probe further and find out to see whether or narrow down to the Kalidasa whom you want. But here, what are the minimum equipments that you have to possess to reach the proper Kalidasa? You must at least know the spelling of the person, see the proper name of the person. It happened to me at one time. I reached Cambridge University Library, and I wanted to see. I had heard that James Ferguson had written extensively on the European architecture before he came here to write on Indian architecture, one of the most pioneers in this field, who started his work here in 1830s and produced a monumental work, traveling from one end of the country to another end in ox pandy, bullock cart. And what he wrote in the later part of the 19th century are still consulted by all of us. And I wanted to know what he has written on European architecture. And the Cambridge University Library did not have even the card catalogue those days. It was a ledger catalogue. This you have to familiarize with the help of the librarian, what kind of catalogues exist and how the catalogues are prepared. Now, when I went and tried to find out to see what Ferguson has written, I faced a problem. And the problem is very interesting. I just went and looked at the ledger Ferguson. There was none. I thought there is some error. Then I thought to see, let me see. There was none. There was none. I went on like a jigsaw puzzle, putting two and two together. I went on experimenting with the spelling of this person. And then ultimately I found out was the one person whom I was after. And then there is also, it is followed by the initials. You have to find the exact initial also. Now, if you do not know the spelling of the author, proper spelling of the author, what is proper spelling of the author? The way in which he wrote is the proper spelling. Not whether it is grammatical or whether it is correct spelling or not is irrelevant. How he writes is very, very important. Many people have the number because he may have written
and Shakespeare himself spelled his name in different ways. All of his signatures have different spellings.
Yes. Well, the same author would not have the different spellings, but the same name could have different spellings. And you have to just look into the catalogue to find out how many varieties of spellings one would encounter on the same names. Now, this is very important. You must remember this, because when the question of citing the author comes up, you have to truly follow what in the way in which he has written his name, not in the way in which you want him to present him. That is a very important factor. Okay. Well, this is about the preliminary requirements, which one is expected to have when one wants to consult the sources. Now, I come back to the sources themselves. I mentioned about the two kinds of sources. One is sources which are directly related to your problem, and sources which are indirectly related to. The indirectly related sources are called secondary sources. Secondary sources tell us two things, important things. One is what work has gone on in the field or relating to your field, peripheral to your field already. And without mastering that, you will not be able to make any headway. It is very, very important that you should know what has already been done in the field, in the broad field which you have chosen. And you have to build up a library, a bibliography. Whenever you start searching for sources, the process of building up bibliography also comes into. Now, while building bibliography, you will have to carefully follow the title and also the way in which the name of the author has been spelled. Of course, you will have to find out the year in which it has been published and the place where it has been published and who has published it. You will have to find out not only that one, you will have to find out to see how many times it has been republished, whether it has been revised and republished or reprinted. These are all common things common things, but the essential things which you will have to know. Because when you quote from a source, without mentioning the edition or without mentioning the year of publication, you will be misleading somebody who wants to verify your statement. For example, Foster's Passage to India, published in the late 20s, has been printed several times. Shakespeare's plays have been printed several times in several places. And you do not find the same statement. Probably you will find the same statement in the same verse, but at the same time the same verse doesn't find a place in the same page. When you cite a verse, in the case of citing, say, Gita, you have to cite only a verse, and it doesn't matter in which page it appears. It is true when you cite Rigveda, whether it is the one edition or the other edition, the Rigvedic passages are the same thing. You will say the 6th section and the 7th or 18th verse, something like this. So it ends there. But when it comes to the modern passages, suppose if you wanted to write, if you wanted to quote somebody from a page, if there are a number of editions of this book, and if you have referred to the old edition or the first edition and not the subsequent editions, you will have to specify where you have got these passages. That means, the edition will have to be indicated very carefully and meticulously, because it becomes easy for others to verify the statement. Suppose if you do not mention the edition and also the year of publication, it may be very difficult for one to search the statement and verify the statement. Suppose your examiner wants to verify it. I have the tendency to disbelieve everything and also verify myself. Then I will be in soup. Then if I lose patience, I will just say that this statement doesn't occur. He has concocted this statement. Of course, researchers, you are in the beginning. As you grow, you would like to concoct several facts also. And several facts. Fact is a final statement. It is a truthful statement. There is no another thing which replaces fact. But as a matter of fact, we always say, which you don't mean a fact. The fact is the ultimate truth. But when we say, as a matter of fact, I am of the opinion, it doesn't mean, that it is the fact. It is the fact of the belief that you have. That is the opinion. Okay. Where do you find the sources? You have got the elementary lessons on these things. You have to first know the spelling of the author, title of the work, edition, year of publication, and all these things will have to be meticulously taken down on your cards, so that whenever you refer to those same work, you will not deviate from the edition to edition. Suppose if you have, in the beginning, if you have read the version say about 1920 publication of Kalidasa. And at the time when you are writing your final thesis, see if it is the 1980 edition of Kalidasa, then casually if you mix up the two, you will be doing an injustice to yourself and to the examiner, to see who is supposed to examine you.
The publisher's name?
Publisher's name, yes, it is necessary, but not very essential. That's why you see in the bibliographical citations these days, I will come to that, bibliographical citations these there, year of publication and place of publication are indicated. Many times the publishers themselves are not indicated. It makes no difference whatsoever. But there is another complex situation, you see, when you have to mention the publisher. There are multinational publishers. They bring simultaneous editions, you see, from all over the world. Take, for example, Oxford University Press. Oxford University Press has a unit here, Indian section. It is an English section and New York. And you name, there are a number of places. In such cases, what happens is normally the mature scholar would cite it OUP, Oxford University Press. And then, I guess, if it is possible, Indian edition or New Delhi. But it may not make any difference to see whether it is New Delhi or New York, because if the same edition has been brought, it is a duplication of the print. Same electronic print is also issued here, so it may not make much of a difference. So in the case of reputed publishers, you see, we sometimes mention the publishers and do not mention the place. But in most cases, you see, we mention the place of publication and also the year of publication. But the year is very, very important. Also, if you are more scientific in your citations, you see, you will have to indicate to see whether it is the second edition or the third edition or the fourth edition or the second reprint or third reprint or whatever it is. Edition is different from print. We'll come to it later on. To say, see, the state archives, the central archives, private archives, institutional archives, you see, which are developed by only religious institutions, archives, you see, which relate themselves to a particular philosophy like Gandhian foundations. So the names of the archives will differ, but the archive is a place, you see, where you find the original document or a reproduction of that original document, usually in the manuscript form, but where the proceedings, you see, are already printed. Even if they are government records of the 18th century, then the copies of those things can exist. When we go to the Vidhan Sabha archives or the Parliament archives, see, then you will have to, you will find, you see, all that relates to the Parliament proceedings, you see, housed in that particular place. That may be the best place to go for consultation. Well, the archives, you see, of a different kind. For example, the Hindu paper is meticulously preserved as a source of information. Of course, all the newspapers, you see, preserve their past editions, daily papers. You see, they are all neatly bound and year-wise classified. If you go to the Deccan Herald office and ask, you see, I want 1920 or 1991 edition, they will produce a big ledger. You see, you will have to find in the 365 papers, you see, whatever you want. And they are also very, very important. And archives, you see, which are sometimes exposed, sometimes not exposed. Which what I mean is archives cannot be assumed to be accessible to everybody at every point of time. The normal rules governing archives are, you see, that vary from 30 to 50 years. Anything that happens today will not be accessible to you for next 30 years. So the library rules and the archival rules provide you information that the classified material, for example, if you want to write on Kennedy and his relationship with Marilyn Monroe, it is classified for 30 years. So you do not get any information about it. If the information leaks out, then you can make use of it, but it will also have a weak statement with weak source of information. It can be questioned. But when the archives, you see, are thrown open, normally 50 years, you see, 30 years now. So Today we are able to get all the papers of Jawaharlal Nehru. When I was young and I wanted to work on Jawaharlal Nehru, this was a classified material and it was not available to us. So there is also a barrier like this. That barrier is already, you have crossed that paper has crossed that barrier. It will be accessible to you. That's why you find to see that new information coming up all of a sudden on the same problem on which many people have worked. For example, Jinnah's relationship with such people, the other nationalists in India. Suddenly something comes up because those papers are for the first time thrown open. And eagerly, like the hawks, the research scholars go there to the archives to find out what is new in this one. And the journalists also go there to find out what is scandalous in it, so that they would make capital out of it. So this is how the new information comes in. I do not know how these things work in the field of science. Probably in the field of science, there is no time limit. Some information may be classified forever, or some information is classified but it is still revealed. So I really don't know how it works, but probably they have also the same kind of things which are applicable to social scientists and humanities. So you go to the library, and how do you find out what is required by you? Most of us go to library often with an empty mind, with a vague idea of needing something from the library. At one time, when we were students, there used to be librarians who were also scholars. But then the libraries used to be very specialized libraries. They used to be very small libraries. Their collection used to be very modest. They knew every book and probably every page in the book also. I still remember when I was a MA student, I used to go to one Mr. Krishna Iyengar in Mysore and give him my requirement in a slip of paper. He was a very, very, very nice gentleman, orthodox in his own way, but a very nice gentleman. He would come tomorrow, he would say, and keep all the books relating in which I'm interested to see on the table. This is what I could find in the library. And you can find out to see whether they are relevant to you or not. And to a student who doesn't know how to access the information, how to locate a book, how to read the numerals, which in turn guide you to the book, this was a great help. But libraries have grown up, in such a way that it's not possible. You cannot expect a librarian to help you with your individual problems. Fortunately, if you have a librarian who is also specialized or has interest in your own field, probably he or she will be able to say, I vaguely remember these are the things which are available to us. But most librarians will keep track of the books which are in use, because they come in and go out. And through the present library network, you will be able to understand very easily. It's much improved now than what it used to be earlier. That whether the book is available or not in our library, whether the book is available in this library or in the neighboring libraries in the city or not, whether the book has been borrowed by somebody, whether the book has been returned after reading, but still it is not reached the shelf. It is still on the transit, what is called as the transit. And whether the book which has reached the shelf has been properly placed there, or somebody mischievously has placed it somewhere else, so that others should not read. This happens in the university libraries. So all these things you will be able to detect through a technique which they have developed now. And they would certainly say, we have a book, it is under transition, I will be able to locate it by evening and you can come and get it. Or they would say that we do not have a book here, but we have it in the Indian Institute of Science, and this is the number, probably. You can go and consult there. Or if you want me to get the books, if we are on the inter-university or inter-institutional lending system, we will be able to secure them to us. This used to be a great help for us. But after getting a book, you don't get to the information, the sources. You just have an access to the book doesn't make you think, you see, that you have sources at your hand. You have to go through the book and find out to see whether what you expected from that, what information you expected from that book is available in that book or not. It is a frustrating exercise many times, yes, but it is a necessary exercise. And only through that method you will be able to extend your vision and extend your reading also. And I would like to commit 100 mistakes before I locate what I want, because you see, 100 different kinds of experiences pour into me, and my personality is built up like that. So, one who is interested in a narrow field of research his inquisitiveness need not be confined to that particular field of narrow field, but it will have to be accompanied by several other things also, which incidentally flow into your lap. And you should be able to enjoy it. You should be able to absorb them. If you do not enjoy them, then say that I have wasted my time here. See, for the half of my day is wasted searching this. This is not a relevant one. Then you may also feel, see, that you feel the otherwise. See, if you think the otherwise, see, you will feel, well, right, I did not know that this aspect also existed. You see, that at least now I know this book exists. Okay. Suppose if you hit on the source material somehow, a document which you wanted. I'm talking about the library facilities. I'm talking about the secondary material. Which, suppose if somebody has published, a book, a paper on remote sensing, says whatever problem you have. Now, where do you find it? Probably these days it is easier because you come to know about it somehow or the other. But generally, it is from the citations that we expand our knowledge. It is not from looking at the information or directly the paper, but who cites the paper. For example, if my paper has been cited in another context by someone else, I would be interested in going through the bibliography or the citations given by that author. And through those citations, I will come to know that these are the books which already exist. And once I compile or prepare that list, then I will go to, next time I will go to the librarian with more confidence, say, look, this book has been published in 1992. This has been published by OUP, and I'm quite sure, it was such a popular book, it should be here. And now can you find it for me? And it will be easier for Hamsa to find it out. Instead of asking, in a vague way that I want some book on this particular subject. Okay, but getting document is not getting information. Document doesn't provide you a fact. Document doesn't lead you anywhere. It is the interpretation of the document that tells you or brings you nearer to the truth. That's why we historians have a saying, document is not history, interpretation of document is history. You can say, you are observing a society. Society itself doesn't reveal anything, but the way in which you probe into society will make you to draw conclusions. It is document is it has no life of its own. You inject life into it, and the more you inject life, the more revealing it would be. As I have to take you back to the original thing statement that I made. First, you understand the language in which it is written. If it is written in Latin, you will not be able to understand. You have to understand the Latin of the time to understand the document. So, possessing document is not the end goal. It is only the beginning. Now, the mastery of language is also important. You have to know the language in which it has been written. You have to understand the formula in which the whole structure, the scientific structure has been developed. Without that, you will not be able to understand. Suppose if you do not know Latin and you are not able to understand Latin, you are not able to have enough time to learn Latin. What is the next alternative that you have? You have to find a suitable translation of that particular document. If the translation doesn't exist, you have to get it translated for you. the higher level of research is always done with the assistance of the classical scholars. This used to be the norm in the entire 19th century and early part of the 20th century. When the dictionaries were compiled by the Western missionaries, they did not know much about the languages, Indian languages, but they knew who knew about the Indian languages. The Pandits were available to them. They made use of the Pandits, but the Pandits were knowing the meaning of the word, but they did not know how to interpret the word. So, a happy combination of both these things, the Pandit scholarship and also interpretative scholarship, when it is combined and fused together, properly fused, then you get a document which is meaningful. I'm not quite sure whether Kalidas could be translated from the original by an Englishman, even if he knows English very well and Sanskrit very well. He will always get some problems. And the problems will have to be clarified, not by one but several people. So the translations are to be depended upon, and now the document which is in original form or a source material which is original in original language, which is inaccessible to you, unintelligible to you, now will have to be made intelligible to you by translating it. But how far the translation is dependable. Suppose if you want to understand a problem, even in the field of science, and catch hold of a paper which has been published in French language, and you do not know French language, but you have to study and understand it. So you go to the French language teacher and try to translate these things. You are extremely fortunate if you can catch hold of a French teacher, French language expert, who also knows chemistry or biology or geology. I do not know whether such people will. Otherwise, normally you go to the French professors who teach French language. But the professors who teach French language will not have the adequate information about interpreting the document because it is too technical for him or her. And at that time, you do not have to depend entirely on the interpreter, that is the translator, because translator knows the language but not the content of the document. So you have to exercise your judgment, but what he or she, the translator, says is maybe right, but it's not exactly the right thing. So you have to find out more than a translator and try to locate persons who could be able to understand the document very, very clearly, and then you will reach a stage of what you could call I know the content of the document.
Technical translators are very expensive.
Well, when they are very expensive, then one of the things is the investment on research is also a very important thing. The investment is of two kinds. What you want, you will have to acquire. I am a very greedy man. I have built up my library, because I invest on my library. There are wiser people than myself. They go to the public library, make use of it, they never buy a book. Like the translation, if it is very expensive, and if there is no alternative, you have to pay through the nose. And there are agencies which will fund you for that also nowadays. So you have to make use of it. But if you wanted to get the funds but not to give the funds to the translator, that is a different issue. But if you are happy with the broad idea of a document, if it serves the purpose, not the literal translation, the verbatim translation, the word-by-word translation, step-by-step tracing of the material, then it serves the purpose. Even a bad translator will give you some idea. And you don't have to go into the every command full stop and then every word and probe into it, because you are not aiming at it. But if it's inevitable, you have to pay through and do it. Or else the other alternative is to learn French. That's why all science students are required to learn one of the foreign languages. In my days, I don't know whether it exists now. And at least we are supposed to, in this field of humanities and social science, we learn the mother languages like Sanskrit and Prakrit and also Tamil. in addition to whatever you learn as your own, as your mother tongue. So if the document relates to this, you have no right to assume that you can work on the document without the knowledge of the language. That's why you see that several of the Western students who come to India to study on Indian culture and Indian art or Indian life, you see, if they first learn one of the languages here, and they learn it better than we do, because we haven't, I got half a dozen German scholars who are my friends, who speak such wonderful Marathi, who read wonderful Marathi, Sanskritized Marathi, who also know the folk Marathi, and they are able to translate some things to tell me, tell the Marathi scholars also, because they cultivate this and they make it a point to realize, they make it a point to acquire that skill. There is nothing which compensates you, there is nothing equivalent to acquiring the knowledge yourself. But many times, you will have to depend on others, because you see, the time at your disposal is such that you will not be able to master everything. And instead of spending time on mastering a language, you better concentrate to see on the issue which is bothering you. So that is the kind of a thing. Now, yeah.
If I know two languages and if I'm able to translate it myself, should I get my translation verified by someone?
Surely, because you see that you have to get it verified, because you are not quite sure. Everybody's child is wonderful to look at. But it is only when others see, you will realize, see, that it's not that wonderful a child. I must quote here, see, a 9th century poet in Canada who said that a poetry, after being composed by the greatest of the poet, will have to be got read by others in order to know its value, because the collyrium or the black that you applied to the eye is not able to understand the vision itself. It is someone else, see, who will look at you and then say, see, that you have got a beautiful eye, and the collyrium has added something to you. So you always say, see, somebody else will have to sit on a judgment on your work. But if you are a master, if you after some time you feel that whatever you have done is enough, then you don't have to bother about it. And mind one thing, see, research is only a semicolon. It is never a full stop. And whatever you think is the full stop will convert itself into semicolon later on, because someone else will come and work on the same problem. So it is the comma and the semicolon, you see, that leads you endlessly to conduct research on the same problem, and there is no full stop in research. And mind another thing also, sometimes you see, after all these accumulations, you see, that you collect all the information that is required, sources are on your table, you're very proud, you parade your scholarship also in bulk, you see, to carry the sources everywhere sometimes. And we have done it at one stage or the other. And you must sit in the corner of a library and watch who parades the scholarship in bulk. Not in mind, bulk, you see, and then you can realize, you see, that he still has to go a long way to understand things. But ultimately, research is not accumulation, but research is only elimination. If you are able to eliminate your ignorance, then you will be able to go nearer to the truth. If you are able to find out what is relevant from the material that you have acquired, source material that you have acquired, and eliminate the rest. And I tell you, it is a very cruel process, very difficult process. It breaks your heart, because you see, you have accumulated so much of difficulty, the information. To put it away from the main writing would be like putting away a part of your flesh, and it is a very cruel process. But you'll have to be extremely cruel in realizing, see, what is relevant to you and what is not relevant to you. And you may say that I went all the way to Delhi to consult the Nehru Memorial Museum Library and brought this document. Now you say you can't use it. You don't have to use it. See, that the student gets heartbroken when the guides give this kind of instruction. But it is the guide who is right. not the student, because you see that you have to eliminate several things.
My problem is the reverse. I mean, nowadays we can get information from the web. Site that. Things like page numbers or questions. There's some page number, you go to the preferred review version, this page number. Then also about authentication.
Yeah.
What do we quote?
You could, well, the way in which it has been done, I say, what is the ideal thing, I do not know. You say in the website, such and such a website, you get this information. You do not quote the page there. And you will have to and as far as the authenticity of the information is concerned, you see, you put it in a tentative form. This is what the website states.
And you have to give that whole address.
Yes, website so and so, yeah.
According to the American Psychological Association's guidelines, citations for websites are from the website.
Yeah, that's exactly. Or compare it to the information available in the website so and so. That is how you do it.
And the time and the date is important because unlike a printed book, the people who manage the website can change it.
Yeah.
Time and date when you access.
Yes. When you're
Yeah.
accessing. And if you save it on your C document and then you by mistake put C/my computer, it doesn't count as a citation. I've seen a lot of papers like that.
Here too, when you make citations of other kinds. For example, you can always say through oral discussion. When I had a discussion with this author, he mentioned it to me. He may disagree with you later on. I did not say this, but she has imposed on me. But the thing is that you can always cite this and say, see, that my personal discussion with the author or personal discussion with the scientist, reveals this information. So you can cite that one. And the other way is that you can also cite from another citation. But only one thing which is very much required is to see that when you cite from the reference, when you take the reference from another person who has cited, be honest to tell that you have recited it. Otherwise, the risk is that you are probably, if he has committed a mistake, you will be committing the same mistake. And it may be below your dignity to say that you have not read the book, but you have shifted that material from that man. But the risk you also have is that if you do not do that one, first of all, you are dishonest. The second thing is, you may be misleading yourself also. So the recitations are accepted. And the recitations play a very important role also, because many books which are inaccessible to us, the information is available to us. So when the information is available to us, we have a right to quote the information depending upon the original citer of the information, or original author who has given this information. You give the footnote or you give the page where the author has discussed this. Get rid of the blame, or get rid of the responsibility, and it is he who has to explain it. But many of us would like to deceive ourselves and say that Manu says like this without reading Manu. Karl Marx says like this without reading Karl Marx, because we do not want to reveal that we have not read Karl Marx. There you land in difficulty. But it's better to cite, the Karl Marx is supposed to have said this, so cite this one and you get rid of this one.
Suppose I am quoting from some other's book. Suppose I am quoting in Shakespeare, which I have read in Tolstoy's book. Then
It. CIT, citing.
but if I have to interpret that in a different way,
Yeah.
use the same quote in different context.
Yeah, you can. Yes. Interpretation is yours. You take the statement only. From which source you take this statement is the question. Yeah. You have right to interpret the manner in which. Right. Okay. After the library, I think we are still in the library. We have to go to the archives. We have to go to the monuments, museums, and such other places, or probably the institution of excellence. And many times, you go to the sources, not to the institutions, but individuals also. Where you go to the individuals, in the social sciences particularly, if you are working on ethnography or issues or linguistics or any other things, or institutions on which are still preserved, rituals and such other things. You don't have a written record. You have got the oral records. And how do you make use of the oral sources? And how do you believe the oral? Authentication comes later. How do you first find the oral sources? Nowadays, the oral sources are also compiled and they are in the CD form or in the archives some way or the other. And probably you can reach this. But 20 years ago, there was no such facility available. If one was to work on, say, on the institution of Devadasis, the temple girls, he or she was required to go to the temples, meet these Devadasis and find out all about them through personal conversation, observation. And even now also personal conversation and observation it plays a very important role. A project is going on, as for example, on IT in the metropolitan area, or you want to study the social life of the IT people, who are paid very heavily, generously. What is the social life of these people? Just as the investigative journalist would do, you also go to this spot to examine. And the difference between the investigative journalist and the research scholar is here. The investigative journalist, though he is accountable, is not accountable, because he could always put it within the quotation and spend the day and somehow convince the people. Next day the same thing could be revised, and that is the journalist would be very proud of that if he can revise his text next day and give another version. He is not bothered about the truth, he is bothered about the information. So information he projects. That's why there are all kinds of investigative journalists. Believable, not believable, not so believable. Those who are after scandals, those who are not interested in scandals. Those who analyze every point and then determine the truth as a researcher would do, as in the case of the Beauforts. But those who are able to steal the show and then end the day, doesn't matter whether it is true or not. But in the case of sociologists who wanted to arrive at conclusions, there are various ways in which they cull out the material. Their source is in the air, it is on the land, it is everywhere. They have to go to this spot to find out, to see what they want. You are working on the slums, you are working on the construction labor. Where do you get the information? You don't get the information in libraries. Maybe there are one or two secondary materials. The others may have worked earlier, so you would like to go and consult the secondary material. Secondary material will inspire you. What is the angle with which they have studied the construction labor? And what is the angle you have now? Is your investigative channel different from that of the one which has been used by someone else earlier? Is it only, the economic part of it? How much they earn, how much they spend, how much they spend on food, how much they spend on liquor, on whatever it is? Or is it a social problem? What is the rate of divorce? What is the rate of reunion? What is the rate of all kinds of things? They have family life. What is the problem? The problems will be different, and the source material that you get is in the field itself. Now, when you have to get information directly, this is a direct dealing. You see, when you normally in research, you depend upon indirect material. Particularly historians and such other people, they cannot and they do not observe the event directly. Most often, they are all dependent on the document. Without a document, there is no fact. That is the conclusion. Ultimately, they say, if you do not have a document, you do not have history. So you can, but you see, in the case of the contemporary problems, you see, you do not have a document of the conventional nature, but you have got documents, you see, which are yet to be found out and which are yet to be interpreted by you. So your document is the field itself. So you go to the field, and what kind of technical operators, you see, you use when you wanted to collect information. I will give you an interesting one, which I have been thinking about for a long time. The Indian mentality is such which doesn't want to say anything unpleasant, and anything which relates to unpleasant behavior, or anything which sounds like an unpleasant one. For example, many times among you must be wondering that social system is changing so fast, but not so fast as in India. We do not have lesbians among us. We do not have homosexuals among us. We do not have scoundrels among us, and whatnot. Is it a fact? If you take a pen and a paper and go to a society and ask, see, do you know anyone who has a lesbian contact? They say no. Have you indulged in this? No. Then you go to another person and say, do you know her? Is she of that tendency? Yes, I know her. She is of that tendency. So she is able to reveal the truth on others, but not on herself. So are you happy on anything, on economics, on social behavior, on notions, or other things? Why I cite this one is, before, suppose you go with the same set of questions to an American householder. She will say, very frankly, she may say, not all of them, but nearly every one of them may say, yes, we had this system, or we have this system. Divorce rate is very high. You ask questions relating to divorce, you ask questions relating to marriage, you ask relating to the sex life, you ask relating to the social life. You do not get the direct answers which may be nearer to truth, simply because, you see, the socio-psychology and the mental makeup which has molded, which these things have molded us, do not help us to answer it directly. So, a person who wants to still investigate will have to first realize how to approach the person, how to approach the information source itself, how to cull out the sources. If you just pass on mechanically a sheet of paper, a questionnaire, and ask them to give you the answer, the questionnaire will be answered, in an ideal way, not in an actual way. So the ideal answer will come out, but not the actual situation. So a person who has to cull out information, so collect the sources, will have to use the technique, and also will have to get into the psychological mold of the community, and then only you will be able to do it. Otherwise, whatever you mechanically collect will be never revealing the truth, or never anywhere be near the truth. Well, probably 2 or 3 such examples should be more than enough. The authentication, or of when it is a written document, is of one kind. Authentication of the fact when it is a oral one is another kind. The authentication of a written document is roughly of 2 kinds. One is, the document itself is to be questioned first of all. Secondly, the statement made in the document will have to be questioned. You cannot accept both of them, you see, on the face value. I will give you an example. The first one is called the external criticism, which every student a research student will have to master. Do not take anything, you see, on the face value. And the second one is the internal criticism. In the standard manuals on methodology, you get this kind of thing, the external criticism and the internal criticism. Simplified, in the simplified form, the external criticism which will be concerned with the authenticity of the document. Suppose you have a play on which you see there is a name of Kalidasa. Would that be enough to believe that it was the work of Kalidasa? Or it is the work of Shakespeare? Well, you can say, see, yes, it has been printed and it's very well known, and why should you doubt it? Well, if it doesn't tally with the list of works which are normally attributed to Kalidasa, and it is a new book, well, you can always say that you have discovered a new work. But actually, the researcher will doubt every statement that appears on the book also. If the plays are attributed to Shakespeare, we ask a question whether a person called Shakespeare existed at any time of the in the past. If he existed, where did he exist? If he did exist and his place is known, did he write the plays? This is not done by an individual, one single author. This has been done for 100 years by several authors. This is authentication of the authorship. There are controversies relating to Shakespeare even now also. There was no person like Shakespeare. You see, there was someone else who wrote in the name of Shakespeare. The pseudonyms are very, very common in our country. We do not know who was the real author and who was the attributed one, to whom the authorship is attributed. We do not know the authors of Vedas. We do not know the authors of Puranas. We do not know, we assume that Valmiki wrote Ramayana. It is a mythical assumption. And since it has been repeated 100 times, you see, the myth becomes a reality. Since there is no alternative contender to Ramayana, we have said, see, all right, there is nobody who seemed to claim anything, authorship of Ramayana, so we will say Valmiki probably was the. Or we will say Valmiki is accepted as the author of Ramayana. So Bharata is accepted as the author of Mahabharata. Who is this Bharata? We do not know. When it comes to famous playwrights also, you have the similar kind of things. See, most of the playwrights and most of the classical works, are assumed, or the authors are assumed rather than the real authors. For example, the greatest of these 7th century works which are attributed to Harsha Charite, Bana's work on Harsha and all these things, we really don't know whether for example, Harsha Charita was written by the poems attributed to Harsha was a great ruler, was actually written by him or by his court poet. So this kind of things are there. At some stage or the other, you reach a conclusion. It is irrelevant to ask